I am now joined in conversation with Makonnen Sankofa, the author of The Rise of Rastafari, Resistance, Redemption, and Repatriation. Makonnen is also the author of Life in Gambia and also the author of How to Sell and Market Your Book and most recent Experiences of Living Across Africa. Well, it's quite a pleasure to have Makonnen on the show today. Welcome on the show.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's great to be back on, Peter English Literature again.
Yeah.
After we had a great interview, I think it was about a year or 2 years ago now.
Yeah, like 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago, really good interview talking about my book, Life in Gambia,
Yeah.
and the rise of Rastafari. And now we're going to be talking about, as you mentioned, my latest book called Experiences of Living Across Africa. And this has my experience of the Gambia in the book, but I've also been to Ghana since I last saw you. So it's also got my experience of living in Ghana, and it's great to be joining you as well from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria at the moment with you, so it's good to see you in person physically.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a pleasure. I'm really excited. Now, I'd first love to ask you, Makonnen, could you tell the viewers about your time living in Gambia and Ghana? Would you love to talk about that?
Yeah, so I've been to the Gambia. I've lived in the Gambia for a year in total. And during my time in Gambia, I've been there 5 times. In terms of Ghana, I lived in Ghana for 6 months.
Wow.
And the two different countries, they're both in West Africa. So let's start with the Gambia. The Gambia is known as the smiling coast of Africa.
Yeah.
And the reason it's known as the smiling coast of Africa because it's the kindness, and of the people. And I think anyone who goes to the Gambia can, testament to that. They are very warm, caring, polite. Some of the friendliest people that I meet, that you'll meet, certainly in my experience, have been people that I've met in the Gambia. So I would say that title, the Smiling Coast of Africa, is a good fit based on how the people are.
Yeah.
In terms of Ghana is a much bigger country because the Gambia is I believe the smallest country on mainland Africa. Ghana, the estimated population, they say the Gambia is about 2.5 million. However, that's an estimate. Yes, it probably now is maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think Ghana is around 30 million, but again, these are estimates, so it could be slightly more. But it's a much bigger country than the Gambia.
Yeah.
You have, I believe, 14 regions. Where I was in Ghana was in Accra, and I think what I would say about the difference is because in Gambia, because it's a small country, geographical size, when you can go to different places, but I think in Ghana, if you go to different areas, it can be completely different, in the region. So where I was based the majority of the time was in Accra, which is like, the main city, the capital city, you could say the London of Accra, for example. At that particular region, I thought it was very Western. I mean, in terms of comparing it to the people, as I mentioned, the Gambia, the people, are polite. I think both of the countries are very, safe countries. I didn't feel comfortable going around, very peaceful countries. However, I thought that the local people in Ghana were a lot more reserved. They're less outgoing. I thought they're a bit guarded and not as warm and receptive as the people in the Gambia. Not to say, you get me, I didn't have any problems or issues, but they just weren't as outgoing. I think reserved is probably the right way to say it. They're very reserved, and I thought in terms of unless you really know them, I don't think they really open up to you quite as well. But again, again, they're polite. Again, nothing. I'm not saying nothing negative against them, but in terms of just I felt that the people in the Gambia are a lot more. They open up to a lot more. I think in terms of other things, looking at Ghana and looking at Gambia, Ghana, because it is a much bigger country, there's a diaspora and communities in both the Gambia and Ghana. A lot of people are going there. So in the Gambia, it's kind of like a tight knit, so everyone kind of knows everyone, because it's a smaller country, or you will know someone who knows someone. Ghana's obviously a much bigger country, so there's a lot of diasporans that are going there, but people are more spread out. The culture, I thought that I preferred the Gambia in terms of the environment, the atmosphere, the culture. I thought that in Accra, it felt very much being like kind of like being in England, but being in in Africa. So, but it depends on the experience you're looking for. So, some people, if you're looking for that kind of similar experience to England or USA, but in Africa, Accra may suit you because it's very Western in terms, and the way I say that in terms of various aspects, even the fact that if you wanted to it's got all that the malls, for example, that people would get in England and America. The supermarkets are like in England we would have like Tesco's, Morrison's, Asda, supermarkets like that. They have Uber, they have Bolt in Ghana. They have KFC, they have Pizza Hut, they have like a lot of the shops and things that people will be familiar with. Product wise, shopping wise, and mobility, even like food deliveries, they have in Ghana. And in terms of so I think with going there, it can be easy to adapt in that sense. Obviously, the culture. That may take people a little bit more time to adapt to it because of the culture. Interestingly, my name is Sankofa, and that's actually a Ghanaian surname. So when I was in Ghana, I would go to like supermarkets and I would see the products like with the name Sankofa. And there's actually a TV station, a radio station, and businesses named Sankofa. So that was interesting for me personally. Sankofa is the symbol of the bird looking backwards. And it basically means to go back and look in the past to move forward in the future. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that I can explain about Ghana and the Gambia and comparisons. But I'll let it come back to you because you may want to ask me some questions that I can follow up with.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing and very lovely to know experience living in Gambia. Now, I would also love to ask you, ask someone who's coming in to Africa for a very first time. I'm curious to know how the people, the local nationals, treated you or received you as what I call an international person or a foreigner, I'd say, in Gambia and Ghana. Would you love to talk about that too?
Yeah, so for those who are watching this on PE English Literature, so I was going to say my background first. So, I was born and raised in England, and that's where I've spent most of my life living. My mum's family heritage, she was born in England, but her family, like her parents and are from Jamaica. And then my dad is from Malawi, which is Southeast Africa. He was born in Malawi, but I was raised in my mum's family, which is of Jamaican heritage. So, in terms of going to Gambia and Ghana, it was similar in a sense of how they look at people who are not born and raised there, and so they tend to see people from the diaspora, and you can understand to some degree because we are different because we wasn't born on the continent. But I feel so I do understand in a sense that, especially as soon as you can hear like the accent of like when they're speaking, or when we're speaking, it's different because they will have the local languages they speak in. Like in Ghana, it's Tree is the common language. In Gambia, it's Wolof, but there are other local languages. So I understand to a degree because our experiences, our culture, and environment we've been raised is different. However, I feel that in terms of it would be good if there was more understanding over the experience of those of us in the diaspora and who are returning to Africa, because we are like we're like long lost cousins or long lost family, basically, or distant relatives. But we are still connected. And those of us in the diaspora, speaking again from more Jamaican side now, because obviously I am African from my dad's side, but speaking more because I was raised on the Jamaican side, we are, descendants of enslaved Africans. Our people came from Africa, particularly West and Central Africa, 400 years ago. Some of us 300 or, were enslaved and taken to the Western world, to places in the Americas, places like the Caribbean, America, Brazil. So we have that connection, ancestrally with Africa because that's where effectively we come from as a people. However, the people on the continent don't seem to understand that or not aware of it. So then there's that lack of, where do you come from? How are you African? How are you? You know, and we're not exactly. I've mentioned how we're not exactly this because obviously
Yeah.
you're born and raised in different countries, but
Absolutely.
not understanding how we people in the diaspora are connected,
So,
you know, to Africa, and Africa is our home too.
yeah.
Yeah, and seeing also the when I went to Ghana, I went to Cape Coast, and when I went to Amina Castle, and then when I was in Ghana, which are the two most notorious, you know, slave castles, and then when I was in Ghana, I went. So when I was in the Gambia, I went to Jufre and then on to Kunta Kinte Island, and people be familiar with Roots, the story of Roots, where you know Kunta Kinte, the main character, he was captured. He's from the Gambia, and Jufre enslaved, and then like many other Gambians, and then taken to taken to America. So even though there are these historical places of the records of enslavement in these countries in the Gambia and Ghana, the everyday person doesn't actually understand, what's happened there, let alone, and certainly not what happened since the descendants of enslaved Africans that left the continent and were taken away. And then, so we are kind of seen going back as just a foreigner, just like a white man, or just like, any other foreigner in some respects, not everyone, but in some respects. And then on top of that, seeing a bit of cash cows, there's people coming, from the Western world, who've got money, and things are cushy cush. That's the way that they look at us. Things, are cushy cush.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying things are not hard in Africa, because I've lived in Africa. I understand the difficulties and the challenges. But there has been a lot of struggle by our people to get where we are. Whether it's in England, in America, and Brazil, our people have had to go through several, civil rights, and to be able to, to get where we are today, it hasn't been easy. And I wish that our brothers and sisters on the continent, if they understood more about the connection, how we are connected with each other, and also about the experience in the diaspora of African Americans, Black British people, and what we've gone through as well.
Wow, that's quite amazing and very wholesome to know. Thank you so much for sharing about that too. Now, as someone who is coming in from the UK for the very first time, I'm pretty sure there will be a kind of a difference in experience in immigration of Gambia, your experience in Gambia, and that of Ghana as well. Could you talk about the differences you experience in immigration between Ghana and the Gambia too?
Yeah, well, if you're coming via British passport,
Yeah.
I'm a British passport holder.
Okay.
If you're going to Ghana, you need to get a visa.
Oh.
Yeah, I did mention that my mum's family heritage are Jamaican. So if you have like some Caribbean islands like Jamaica,
Yeah.
you can get you with that passport, you don't need a visa. It's something that they've done. So, but if you're a British passport holder, you do need a visa. So when I went to Ghana, I had to apply from England to get a visa. It was a bit of a long, process, to be honest. I wish it could be maybe a lot simpler.
Yeah.
In 2019, that's when the president of Ghana, they had the year of return. During December, they waived the visa for like a couple of weeks. And when I was in Ghana, because I was in Ghana from last November to May, they waived the visa for like 2 weeks. Not during the time I was there, but I still need the visa because I applied from like November. So they may do it for like in the holiday period, like December. So I know because there's a lot of people that travel to Ghana in December or January, the New Year. So it may be waived during that period. But if you're traveling, outside of that in general, you need to get a visa. The Gambia is different. The Gambia, if you've got a British passport, you don't need to get a visa. They just stamp your passport on arrival. You do have to pay £20 or $20 or 1,000 Dalasi, when you get to the airport, and then when you're leaving, you pay another fee. I think I paid £20 when I got to the airport, and when I come back, I gave them 1,000 Dalasi. But the immigration, that's just getting the visa in and out of the country. Or more was talking about getting the visa going into Ghana. You pay for the visa, in advance. Basically, I'm trying. I think the visa cost me. I think £60 it cost me to get the visa. Yeah. Now, in terms of residency, this is what you have. Residency. If you're staying in those countries, you need to have a permit. So with Gambia, the residency process is quite straightforward. There was an office in Califing that I went to, and you know what, it was done with it. The process was done within that day. I mean, it took them. I had to go back a week or a couple of weeks later just to get the card. But in terms of, you know what, they don't. There's not like a whole list of things that you need to bring to them. You know,
Yeah.
I think in Ghana the residency process, you know, it's more complicated. There's more red tape around it in terms of the requirements.
Yeah.
You know, of getting the visa, and the fees are more expensive as well. In my book, I do explain it because it's not something that you can just explain in just like, you know, 1 minute. It's quite but in the book, Experiences of Living Across Africa, there's actually a part of it which explains the whole process of how you can go about getting residency in Ghana. Yeah. Because it also depends on, you know, what you do. Depends on, you know, if you have a business, are you a student, you know, NGO, you know, it depends on what you are doing. You know, depends on, you know, what kind of application what you need to submit when you're going to get the visa. So what I would say is, you know, if you are thinking obviously of going to Ghana, visa and, you know, residency, because it talks about the Gambia and both Ghana about the process, but the Ghana has actually laid it out exactly, you know, in terms of, you know, what you need to get the residency.
That's quite good. I think that would help me if eventually I want to relocate to Gambia or Ghana in future time.
Well, you've got ECOWAS passport, so you've got ECOWAS passport, so you would be able. You don't need no to live. Well, to live actually you do, but not to enter. Not to enter.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, there's also a chapter in your book where you talked about the things to do or to consider when moving to Africa, and that's in page 48. Now, I'd love to ask you, what are the things that you think people should do if when moving to Africa?
Okay, so there's several things that people need to consider. We could be, you know, talking about this for a very long time, but one of the main things I think people need to consider, first and foremost, is what African country they're moving to, because there's, you know, 54 countries in mainland Africa. So what is suitable for you may not be suitable for me, because it might not be suitable to someone else, because, you know, we all have different personalities and we have differences. So if you hear someone say, oh yeah, you know, I really liked Ghana for this that reason, or I really like, you know, Zambia for this or that reason, or I really like Senegal, or whatever African country it is, it's then I think down to you as a person to, you know, to go and experience it yourself, not to just take on board what someone else has said, because you know, if I did that, I'm about to be here with you today, Nigeria. Yeah, you have to really go and experience it yourself. How much money do you need to live? Is another important thing, because financing, budgeting. One of the main reasons why a lot of people go to Africa and then come back to the diaspora, England and America, is because they struggle financially. And you can plan and prepare for that, and make sure, or try to make sure, that you have means to support yourself for when you go into an African country. You know, some kind of residual income, like regular money that's coming in. It could be, you know, various ways. Maybe you work online and you have money coming in, you know, in pounds and dollars online. You're paid by, you know, a company, a business, you know, in England, America, or China, that's paying you at, you know, competitive salary rate. You know, what are you going to do if you're going to set up a business there on the ground? And also be mindful if you set up a business on that country on the ground, because do your due diligence, because there's businesses that might run in England, America, that might not run in that particular African country.
Absolutely.
So, and then they take time, again, business to get established, to get yourself off the ground. But, you know, money, you know, how you're going to get money coming in is very, very important. Again, and there's a lot more in the book that covers that, in terms of whether you're going to move to Africa, shipping equipment, whether you're going to be shipping your possessions, shipping a car, that's very much things to consider, because something that people run into with shipping a car is that they don't quite understand how much they have to pay in terms of taxes when the car vehicle gets to the port, and sometimes that money can be quite a lot. And I've had cases that people haven't picked up their car from the port because of this. So you need to calculate and take that into consideration. Whether it's worth shipping your stuff, or whether it's worth buying new things locally in that country. So there's various things down to even electricity. People in England and America, a lot of people are used to 24/7 electricity. Like in most African countries, it's not 24/7 electricity all the time. I mean, there are some places you may get 24/7, but the light can go out anytime, any day. You don't know how it can go out. It can go out for like 10 minutes. It could go out for an hour, 2 hours.
More than that.
Well, so some places it can go out more. But I don't want people to think like I don't want people to think the wrong thing with Africa, like the electricity is going out for days everywhere. So but there's a lot of things. I mean, like again, water shortages. If there's no water coming out of the tank, and you might need to go to someone locally, a neighbor, to go get a bucket of water from their borehole and all kinds of things. So the things to consider when moving to Africa, it prepares you of a lot of things, even how to take out money. Taking out money from your foreign bank account, because if you've got a bank account, a UK or US bank account, how you can take out money not without having to avoid ATM charges. How you can get out money. Obviously, as well, man, you don't want to go to an ATM machine and then you're taking out 300, 400 pounds. One, because if you try to do it in Gambia, you won't be able to do that because ATM machines generally don't have that much money. And in a lot of African countries, you can't take out that amount. So how do you get that money out? And you may not necessarily always want to do it through the bank because of the bank charge transaction fees if you do it directly from the bank. But there are ways, which I explained in the book, that you can take out money at good rates.
Oh, that's quite a lot to take in. And now, in recent years, there has been an influx in people of African descent, in the diaspora moving into Africa. What do you think caused that?
I think one of the main reasons has been because of the popularity on social media, particularly YouTube. There's a lot of YouTube channels where there's a massive, there's a massive following and loads of subscribers, and they're watching content and of the different African countries. And unlike before, where a lot of times people got information about Africa was only through like mainstream news outlets. Now people have alternative sources, and they can see people like themselves from the diaspora, a similar background, who are living in Africa, and they can see the streets, they can see the supermarkets, they can see everything happen, that basically people documenting their lives in Africa on YouTube. When I was in the Gambia, and I could testify this, because when I was in Gambia, I was part of a YouTube channel called Blacksit, and I worked with a lady called Juliet Ryan, and that was when I was in Gambia in 2019. I worked with Blacksit for about 3 or 4 months. I was one of the foundation members. I did the video, the filming, and also the video editing. And during that time, Blacksit was one of, if not the most popular YouTube channel in the Gambia at the time. We had about 10,000 people that on average that was watching our videos, and we showcased the Gambia, the day-to-day life. We interviewed local businesses. We took the camera to so many different places. We showed property in the Gambia, medical health facility, we hotels, other people's experience on the diaspora that have moved. So we documented the country, and I see personally, when I went back to the Gambia in 2022, I saw that the increase in those from the diaspora had gone up, a lot. And Blacksit has inspired hundreds of thousands of people to move or visit the Gambia. So I've been part of the influx and the popularity. I've contributed with that myself. In the Gambia, and then there's other people that have got YouTube channels that have maybe about Ghana, about other African countries, and that's attracted other people and other channels in the Gambia as well. Because but in general, YouTube as a whole has encouraged a lot of people to come to Africa. Also, another thing you have, which is in creating popularity, the year of return, I mentioned it a bit earlier, but the year of return in Ghana in 2019, where the president of Ghana, he made it the year of return to people from the diaspora, to come to Africa, particularly Ghana, and see where some of their ancestors came from ancestrally, and a lot of African Americans, particularly, and some Black British people, and some of the Caribbean, answered the call and they came to Ghana, and and many people have stayed on, have moved to Ghana. Some people have just visited. Some people are back and forth now, but that created on social media, a lot of popularity on Ghana, and Ghana is one of the most, and Gambia, two of the most arguably populous African destinations that people are talking about visiting now. But Ghana, certainly the year of return, catapulted that, and now they've got this campaign called Beyond the Return, and people are still going. A lot of people are still going to Ghana, whether it's visiting or whether it's moving there. So the year of return played a big it had a big impact on that. And then you also have the ongoing social media as well, with Ghana, and then other things that I think Africa as a whole, I think the popularity in Afrobeats, stuff like that. I mean, you had the film Black Panther, coming to America. I think Black Panther, was a film, that showed a mainstream film that showed Africa, in a positive light, undercolonized African country, albeit fiction, but that concept, from a mainstream Marvel Studios, you haven't seen something like that before. So I think these are all, part of the reasons which has, driven the popularity, as well as people becoming, some people being fed up with the in England for many different ways. Some people seeking a better life, in Africa. Some people, wanting to be in a majority Black country, without the racism that you get in England and America. So, but these are some of the reasons why people are looking at moving to the continent. Also, you get more money for your pound, converting it over there as well. Yeah,
I think that's one of the most important reason or factor that people consider, because they're like, oh, I get to hear that a particular dollar is so amount in Ghana cedi, so amount in Nigeria naira. I said, so if I come to Nigeria, that means I'll be a millionaire. Okay, that's fine with you. Anyway, one of the things you also mentioned here in experiences of living across Africa was the part where you have some contributors talking about, more like an interview, as I read in the book. Now, I'd love to ask you, tell us about how the book came into being and how your selection process in terms of getting contributors for this book.
okay, so the book came into being, as I mentioned earlier, I lived in Gambia.
Yeah.
And then that was when we did our interview about 2 years ago. We talked about life in Gambia. Since then, I had lived in Ghana, and I'd been to, I lived in Ghana, and I wanted to have a book, but not just my experience of Ghana and Gambia. I wanted to have other people's experiences of living in different African countries.
Yeah.
So, and not just West Africa as well, because I wanted to also have the different regions. So this book has got, South, East, North, West Africa, the countries it covers. You've got Ghana, the Gambia, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Zambia, South Africa, Senegal, Egypt, Tanzania, Sierra Leone, Tunisia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and Kenya. So it's a unique book. I haven't really, come across a book like this, which is, different people's stories of, so much different African countries. And what it's unique as well, because it's not just people that have been on holiday for like 1 week, 2 weeks. It's people that have been there. The selection process, it had to be the people, of African descent, and it had to be people that had been in those countries for at least a minimum of 6 months. Some being between six. I think the average of time people was there in between 6 months to 11 years. So the range. But you have to be, because if you're in the country for a week, 2 weeks, you don't really know. So you need to really be someone living, and that's why part of it is called living. It's not about visiting. Living is different. It's about living in that particular African country. And the book is about, it can be read by people of all backgrounds, but it is for people, in terms of the people where audience is aimed for people, of African descent who are making the move, because those are the people that are making the move, relocating to Africa from the diaspora, going back to the land of their ancestors, and that journey, covering the journey, because traveling to Africa, it is going to be different for someone of African descent versus someone who's not of African descent.
Absolutely.
So I wanted it to cover that experience, so to other people, that can relate, to that journey, and also different people of different walks of life, in terms of it's a mixture of males, females of different ages and different professions, because it's different than, say, a 60-year-old woman versus like a 20 who's got 4 kids versus like a 20-year-old single man. So the book, it has a lot of contributors. I think there's 13 contributors in the book that talk about the different regions in Africa, and it's not all interviews. There's a few interviews that are in there, but the majority of them are articles that people have written, and they've written articles, and you'll be able to read. They're short articles, about 2,000, 2,500 words. Cause I don't want it to be too long, but enough for you to get a taste, to get a feel of what they've written. But there's a few people I interviewed. One person was Osman Toure, because although most of the people are going from the diaspora to the continent, there are a few people that have moved from one African country to another African country, such as Osman, who moved from the Gambia to live in Rwanda for a while. Then you have Prince Mega, who he's lived in South Africa, but he's a Nigerian. And you have Yaya Toure, Alpha Yaya Toure, who moved from Guinea to Tunisia. So, but then the majority of the others are people that are like African Americans, Black British people from the Caribbean that have gone onto the continent. The selection, I mean, the interesting things about the book as well. If you look at the book, it has the people that I've included in it are quite prestige. I mean, you've got the son of a famous civil rights activist. So I mentioned Alpha Yaya Toure. He's Kwame Toure's son. Yeah. You have Prince Mega, who's related to the Oba of Lagos, King Oba of Lagos. You have Prince Diana Samir, who was actually African American, but he was coronated as a prince in Nigeria, and he's got a YouTube channel which has got over 130,000 subscribers, and he documents. He's inspired a lot of people to live and move to Africa. Interestingly, Diana is the only person I interviewed him. He's the only person who hasn't lived in Africa, but I still wanted him to be part of the book because I think he's been to about over 15 African countries, and he's always in Africa every year, normally a few times. So I thought it would still be good to get his insight. But other people in the book, you've got people that assist in relocating to Africa, tour operators and guides, other people that have written books, authors. I believe in total there's about 5 authors, written separate books, that own individual books, or part of this book. You also have media experts, former students, and a retiree. So the people in the book, for example, they've all coming from professions or backgrounds, as well, which makes the book Experience of Living Across Africa a really interesting read.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. That's a lot of lot of research, a lot of people involved in it and contribution. That's quite a lot. Now, I'm also quite curious to know who is this book aimed and how valuable is it to what I call education, or particularly who is this book aimed for and how valuable is it?
Well, the book is an anthology book. There's a compilation of different people's writings.
Yeah.
It's aimed for people, that are eager to learn about the customs and cultures of different African societies, as well as people moving. The personal target would be people that people want to move from the diaspora to the continent, or people, maybe even some moving from the continent to the continent. But then, even if you're, not thinking of moving to Africa, but you want to learn information about continent, it's also useful to you. If you want looking at somewhere to go as a holiday destination, or for business, or business opportunities. But it's definitely a book, because it could be you may have not thought about going to Sierra Leone or Zimbabwe or that country, but this book will give you more of an insight so that you can discover things that then you can may tempt you to want to go to that particular African country. And the book is not written, and I just want to clear this, it has the good, bad, and the ugly. It's not written to persuade people to go to Africa, whatever country in Africa, and it's not written to deter people from going to Africa as well. It is written to give a reflection of people's experiences of going to those African countries. Wow. So, yeah, in terms of the value, I think it's an invaluable book for people, particularly if they're moving to those countries, because it will show you things that you would not have considered. The things to consider when moving to Africa is important, because although there will be differences in each individual African country, there's a lot of universal things that apply to all those countries or most of them. That's where that chapter things to consider when moving to Africa. Like we mentioned electricity earlier, that's something that would generally apply across Africa, regardless of the electricity may be better in one country than the other, but in general, the electricity is one thing. Taking out money, for example, shipping, how are you going to live and how are you going to make money? These are kind of like, universal things that regardless of what country you've chosen to go to, you still need to consider budgeting and the various things in that chapter, things to consider when moving to Africa. So I say, it's an essential book. It's a must-read book, particularly if you are someone, considering moving to Africa, because it could be the book, that in terms of that saves you from, from in terms of, or makes it a softer landing, should be the word. It makes it, that gives you a softer landing. Even things like, forming connections with people. Africa's about connections and friendships and community, because you go to Africa, you want to have, still want to have friends, people around you, and those kind of things. And, things are done, whatever African country you go to, it's not England, it's not America. Things are done differently, so these are all things that that are highlighted in the book.
Yeah, that's so great to know. That's a lot of value, and I love the fact that you mentioned what the book is aimed for. Now, in case we have some interested viewers who are watching this interview and they would love to get a copy of your book, how can people buy the book, and also how can people stay in touch with you?
So, to get a copy of the book, Experiences of Living Across Africa, the best place I would say to get a copy of the book, Amazon. And the reason I say that is because that has a further reach in terms of people. I know your viewership are people, in different countries. So whether it's in Europe or America or this country, as long as it's a country that Amazon deliver to, speaking of the countries that they deliver to, if you fall under one of those countries, you can easily get one. And also because you can get it in paperback and Kindle as well. So, if you want the physical copy or you want the Kindle copy, just go on Amazon and write Experiences of Living Across Africa, and then you can put the name Makonnen Sankofa, and that is spelled MAKONNEN, and then Sankofa SANKOFA. So what I know you'll do as well, Peter, you'll put in the description of the YouTube channel, so people can, if you go onto the link in the description of Peter's channel, it will link you to where you can get a copy of Experiences of Living Across Africa. And also, my other book titles are there on Amazon as well. Yes, The Rise of Rastafari, Life in Gambia, the Smiling Coast of Africa, How to Market and Sell Your Book, is another book I've written as well. They're all available with Experiences of Living Across Africa, all in paperback and Kindle, so you can get a copy of them in Amazon. Now, in terms of contacting me, contact me social media. I know you'll leave my social media links in the YouTube as well. But if my Facebook, all my socials, if you just put in my name, you'll find me, Makonnen Sankofa. Again, that is MAKONNEN, and then SANKOFA. Feel free to reach out to me on WhatsApp. You can speak to me directly if you're interested in inquiring about a book, or if you want to buy bulk copy, wholesale copies, or you want to just reach out to me. Feel free to contact me via WhatsApp. That is on +44 79 43 178 +44794317. Again, that is +44794317817817.
Wow, that's so lovely. You're giving all this information away for contact and everything. That's so lovely, and I'm hopeful that viewers would able to reach out to you directly. Yeah, so for interested viewers who love to get a copy, like Makonnen said, I left a link in the description part of this interview where you can get a copy directly on Amazon. So thank you so much, Makonnen, for coming on the show. It's so wholesome to be able to speak to you physically. I'm excited.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Peter.
Yeah, enjoy.